Hello, welcome. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is such an honor to have you with us for this inaugural event. We're so happy to have you here. Why don't you go ahead and give us your name, pronouns, and any identities that you would like to share?
Sure. So I'm SK or Sarah Kate Smigiel. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm non-binary.
Awesome. I am also non-binary. um, all right, so to start us off, I do have a fun little icebreaker just to kind of get things rolling, I guess.
Sure.
So the icebreaker is, what is the best concert or festival that you have ever been to?
So I went to a Hosier concert in North Carolina when I was in college. I was visiting a roommate of mine in her hometown, and we went, and it was an outdoor concert that got rained out. So we were like super upset. We ended up like
Ooh.
going to a nearby place to eat food, and we waited like 3 hours. And then Hosier announced that they were actually going to do the concert, and there was only like 150 people left. So it ended up being this really intimate thing, which was like super cool. I'll never forget it.
That's amazing. The best concert I think I ever went to was a 21 Pilots concert. Most of the ones
Nice.
I have been to were like Christian concerts way back when I was younger.
Yeah.
Um, and so I don't have like I haven't been to a ton of concerts except for Christian ones, but the 21 Pilots one was really, really nice. It was great.
That's great.
Yeah. So, I've been following you for quite a while, specifically because of the hate comment erasure poetry,
Mhm.
which really inspired me to think intimately about how like hateful words can be reconfigured and reused in uplifting ways. For those who don't know who are watching, SK takes hate comments and invites their audience to essentially create like blackout poetry by crossing out like some words and leaving others, which results in like an uplifting version of the comment, which is really cool. I like how it works. And I like that you opened it up to your followers as well, because if I remember correctly, you originally just did it yourself. And
Yep.
then you were like, I like that other people are kind of contributing to this as well. This actually inspired one of my own ongoing works of art,
Mhm.
or like a series that I'm doing called I Wish You Had Said,
Nice.
which I rearrange like harmful words from letters I was written, which changes the message into something more compassionate. And then I have like collage scenes behind those words. So it's been really healing for me, and I it was directly inspired by seeing that like ways we can rearrange these verbiage um, to create something new. So I wanted to ask, what prompted you to create that series?
Sure, yeah. So when I was younger, I used to go like thrifting with my mom, and she loved to look at the books, and I would get like old books that just I liked the way they looked, and I would basically make blackout poetry in the pages just for myself, like no matter what the book's content was. So I kind of always had that practice in my back pocket. And then a few years ago, I read Kate Bear. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she does. Lots of like feminism work. She's an author, she does poetry. And she took some of her like women's rights and feminism content that had received email responses and did blackout poetry with that. And then I just had like this moment of like, I can combine these things that I've already been doing and kind of like handle the volume of hate comment poetry or hate comments that I'm already getting with poetry. So I did
Mm.
start doing it by myself, like you said. About once a week, I would just choose like a more interesting or robust comment that had a little meat to it and would do it myself and share it. And it had a really great response. So then I started opening it up to other people because they would also screenshot the original comment and do it themselves, like without me asking. So I was like, oh, people want to like be involved in this. So then I now to this day, I think we're on week like 40 or something crazy. It's been
Wow.
almost a year of having my followers do it. Um, I'll choose a comment weekly and post it on my stories and then allow people to screenshot it and use like the editing features on their phone. And then they submit it to me and I just choose, a handful of them to share so people can see how others took different messages of love or sometimes humor from them as
Mm.
well. But yeah, it's been really uplifting and wonderful community care for sure.
I love that. And do you do this type of poetry with like other emails or letters or anything like that, or is it just with these comments?
I've done some of it for myself personally, like probably along the same lines of what you said, of having some like more personal things that people have sent me that have been hurtful and harmful. I've done it for myself, but I haven't shared those. Those have just been kind of things that
Yeah,
have helped me, because it is a great way to process some of that
it really
hateful
is.
input and really make something like tangibly beautiful out of it.
Absolutely. Um, I think any therapist would recommend doing something along those lines.
Yeah.
It's almost like a new way of doing like the empty chair method where you like talk to someone that isn't really there. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a way of doing that without like, when you do the empty chair method, it does feel a little silly sometimes. You're literally sitting there talking to nothing. But um it's kind of a similar way of doing that, but a little bit more creative and artistic, which I like. I think it's really fun and cool.
Yeah, it's fun and it is healing. It is similar to the empty chair thing of being like, it doesn't matter if this person receives the transformation of energy, but I'm going to take what I want away from it. And it does, it allows that same
Exactly.
energy for you. Hmm.
Exactly. So, how did you come into creating content for social media?
Yeah, so it kind of all feels like a happy accident. I just had like a normal Instagram page that was like my friends and my family, and I just posted pictures of like my dog and my coffee, like very like 2010s kind of energy. Um, and in 2019 and 2020, I started to consider top surgery for myself. I had heard the word non-binary for the first time in a Facebook group, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that explains me. It was just like a light bulb moment, and
Mm,
I previous to that thought that I couldn't get top surgery if I wasn't a trans man because I didn't know
mm,
that it was accessible to me. I thought there was like, you had to have like, I had this harmful idea of sex reassignment surgery because that's all I had seen in the
mm,
media, and I didn't know there was nuance. So I turned to the internet to look for anyone like me. Like, I'm feminine, I'm, not on testosterone. I just want to have a neutral vessel. And that was kind of the only gender affirming care I desired. And I just couldn't find anyone like me. Like, it just didn't
mm,
exist. And that lack of representation really hindered my process of knowing who I was. So I decided that when I went into surgery, very like not knowing what to expect because I didn't see anyone doing it like me, that if I shared about it and I just, helped one other person like see themselves in
mm.
me and feel more prepared than I did, that would be enough. And that was a very scary decision at the time because with my like 1,000 followers of only friends and family and people I went to school with, I was like, I don't know how people will react. Like, and when I started to share about like my consultation and like very early steps of surgery, I got a lot of really like curious questions and things that came
Mm,
from ignorance, but they meant they were well intended. So
mm,
I started to educate friends and family, and I put together little like graphic design, like infographics and things just to help people stay informed about my journey. And that snowballed. And I started to very quickly gain a following of people who were like me, who needed the same way I needed that space to facilitate conversations that like weren't being had. So I came to this point where I reached like maybe 5,000 or 6,000 followers very quickly, where I was like, okay, do I allow this to happen and I like facilitate these conversations and I engage with this, or do I just like stop sharing because this is weird and I didn't sign up for this? Um, but I decided the community aspect was just so important and I needed it so much that I was going to let those people grow with me. And it's been 4 years almost, and I have
wow.
almost 100,000 followers, and it's been just the craziest journey, the craziest journey.
Yeah, I can imagine. Was the has the overwhelming like response to your work been pretty positive?
That's what you'll see on my page.
Mhm.
That's what you'll see on my page because I heavily moderate, and I think that not everyone has the room for that, and I completely understand, but I do pride my little corner of the internet on being safe, not
Mm,
just for people who are queer and who are trans and who are considering top surgery and don't want to see the nonsense. I also think it's important to keep it positive, because there's people who come in ignorance who aren't hateful, who just don't know
mm,
like where to turn or where to ask questions, and the only way to learn is to have the space to do it. So I welcome that ignorance, and I make sure that they don't feel like they're taking part in something hateful when they
yeah,
ask, well-intended questions. So I do moderate and I keep things pretty positive on my page. There are things that slip that I don't see, but my followers have also grown with me and realized that's what I do. So they tend to tag me in things that can keep it positive. But yeah,
that's good.
there's hate. There's definitely hate. That's what a lot of
Yeah.
my content is based off of. But
Mhm.
I want to keep it as uplifting as possible.
Yeah. I love that you said that, that a lot of it comes from ignorance and you want to be like welcoming of that so that people can learn.
Yeah.
That's exactly what our mission is with the museum is we really want to create this open space for people to like they no one's forcing them to come. No one is forcing them to interact with us. They are coming because they want to learn and they want to know more and um maybe they will leave with the same opinions that they had before,
Hmm.
or they could step in, they could learn more. They could see we've been here since ancient times. They could see that we are thriving, we are creating art. They could interact with some of us and know that we're not like crazy people. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever happens, we are creating this space where not only like trans people and their families can get resources and care and community build, but also a place where people who aren't a part of the community can also learn and just kind of get a little bit more of a sense of what it means to be trans, non-binary, genderqueer, intersex, essentially all of the gender diverse categories.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I really love that you're kind of doing this work already.
It's important. If there's no space for that work, then nothing will ever change. And I think oftentimes people are afraid to ask questions because they don't want to come across like they don't know something that they should know. And it just, we're trying to build bridges in the community instead of stop people from learning.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
find myself in that space as well where like I don't want to say something wrong.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I don't say things.
Me too. I'm still
Um
learning every day. There's new identity words and, parts of the community that I'm like, help. I need to know more about this so that I can better, serve people and, meet people where they're at.
absolutely. And I think it's really important that we all continue to like even within the community, we all need to continue to learn and we need to continue to like keep that space open and also be accountable for anything that we are ignorant about.
For sure.
We need to make sure that we are like communicating, hey, I actually don't know much about this. I'm sorry. Let me go learn about this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So we just discussed like your platform is very like open and welcoming and very gentle in its approach is something that I really love. It's very different than like other platforms I've seen where they like just kind of give you information and it's not it's needed and it's good. It's just a different approach where it just kind of feels like almost like reading a textbook. Whereas yours is like very community building and you really want to like engage with people and you can kind of feel that like warmth that it brings to the community.
I love
How
to hear that.
can yeah. How can we as gender diverse people continue to foster this type of warmth?
Yeah, I that's a great question. I think that my platform starting the way that it did, it has always been just as much about community as it is about me. Like I'm
Mm,
not the be all know all. I'm still learning, like we were saying. So I think that people in the community that find themselves with platforms or find themselves with just community members locally or online or wherever it may be, need to take the same approach that we literally all can give each other knowledge and live experience and understanding that we ourselves could not have alone.
mm,
we are a community of like, we're just a network of individual experiences. So I think, like you said, listening to other people in the community and being honest when you don't know, that's okay. It's okay not to know. And just because you're in the community doesn't mean you have to be an expert on things. In fact, you should always be like a lifelong learner. That's how community builds and grows. So I think like committing to your curiosity, being open to being wrong, and not making it about your own experience any more than the people who stand against trans rights or against queer rights make it about their experience. All experiences are welcome and equally as valid.
Absolutely. And what do you think cisgender allies could do to hold space for trans people in similar ways? Because obviously it's going to
Uh,
look different between
yeah,
like our community advocating for ourselves and holding space for ourselves versus other people holding space for us.
yeah. In the way that non-binary and queer people and trans people should be listening to each other and uplifting each other, cis and non-queer folks need to uplift queer folks. So instead of talking to your, uncle who doesn't believe in trans people about what you know about trans people, let that be the door to then giving your uncle some resources from a trans person. I know not everyone is receptive to that right away. So sometimes you do need those like bridge conversations of like, hey, like that's not cool when you hear something that you don't agree with, and having an ally be the bridge to the trans or the queer voice, but making sure you really are highlighting, centering, and uplifting the voices of lived experience, I think is really important. So also when you don't know as an ally or a supporter how to answer something, ask the people who do know, who you can trust, and you can like have their actual lived experiences be highlighted instead of your perception of them.
Absolutely. It is really important to make sure that you are uplifting those who have those lived experiences as like I know we get a lot of people in the trans and gender diverse community that want to speak for us, and sometimes they do it incorrectly.
Yeah.
And another similar example I can think of is the deaf community often get people who learn a sign online and try to teach it, and they teach it improperly.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, our co-director at CGD, Kimberly, is deaf and has so many opinions about that. If they were on right now, that they would absolutely say. But yeah, it's very similar in that like if you don't really know what you're talking about, you maybe shouldn't be speaking on it. Um, it's always so much better to have someone who knows what they're saying, but also you want those. It's kind of like a catch-22 because you also want as much like exposure, for lack of a better word, as possible. You want people to know what's going on, and sometimes people will only listen to people that look like and talk like them.
Yeah, it's true.
And so you want people who know what they're talking about and who have this lived experience, but you also want people to like listen and see it and interact with it. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? It seems like you have
Yeah, I think you're spot on that, sometimes it really is you want one of your own to that'll be more impactful for someone who truly is just ignorant and hateful, to have someone that they trust or they understand lived experience and can see themselves in, like being the person to say, you're wrong and here's some information that could help you expand. It might be more well received that way. And it is important to have those folks who kind of bridge the gaps. But I think what's important is for those people to know their limits and not speak about what they don't know. So making sure that they stand up for what they know is right, and then redirecting those people to resources that can fill in the gaps for what they can't share about because they don't live.
Yeah, exactly. Um, what kind of needs do you see in our community of gender diverse individuals that maybe aren't being met on social media, but that could be addressed on social media?
Well, there's a lot. Like as my page has grown, the need has grown. It
Mm,
all grows together. So I see a larger scope of need and hate and concern and care and all of the good and the bad at once. As
mm,
far as need specifically goes, I get a lot of mutual aid requests, and I try my very best to share as much as I can. I've organized some larger mutual aid, um, like funds that I have had help with partners and other people who've seen things as it's grown, like help me fund them. We have moved families out of states with anti-trans legislation, and we've covered top surgeries and done big important things, but there's just so much. There's just so much aid needed.
mm.
And I really do believe that nobody will take care of us better than we will. And community care is so fundamental for the queer community. Um, I think that social media is a very powerful tool to connect folks who need help for fundraising for gender affirming care, because, you know, laws and states aren't allowing us to do those things, for getting over and getting through like the hoops that we have to jump through to connect us to folks that will help us access the care we need. Like social media can allow us to do all of those things, and there just needs to be more facilitators, which is kind of the circle that I'm in now. I'm attempting to facilitate as much as I can. I've created a group chat of other queer creators who have similar platforms and followings that I do. We do a lot of discussion about what we can do. We share resources with each other to share with our communities. So there's a lot happening like behind the scenes, but there could be a lot more. And the
Mm,
need, the volume is so high. I wish I could help every person that requests help, but I'm also a trans person who needs help, you know? Like we're all out
yeah,
here just trying to give what we can. Um, and it's just social media is a great way to do it. There's just such a high volume that people don't see.
absolutely. Are there ways that, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, we could think about it later if we need to, but are there ways that CAGD as an organization could help you facilitate these conversations, or even create a place on our website or something like that that would kind of
For
help
sure.
further these
We
missions?
we can chat more. I'm chatting with a couple different places. The last fundraiser I did, I had 3 recipients for 3 different. They were randomly selected from my following who had queer related mutual aid needs, and we fully funded all of those. I was in partnership with One Simple Wish, which is a nonprofit that just reached out and said they wanted to help, and we're kind of in communication right now to see if there's more of a like structured way besides my DMs that I can collect these things. So I'd love to keep you in mind as a help for that initiative. I'll let you
Absolutely.
know as things progress what that could look like.
Absolutely. We would love to get involved and continue to stay in conversation for that.
That
This
would be
is
great.
a huge area that needs to be touched more by as many hands as possible.
Yeah,
And I think that would be a great way to collaborate, would be to see
wonderful.
what we can help with. Huh.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch about it for sure, because there's always more need, and I am looking for helping hands.
Absolutely. And we have hands.
Perfect.
Are there any topics or themes that you feel need more emphasis, like specific topics?
I'm a big believer in more euphoria and less dysphoria. And I
Mm,
don't mean that in that conversations around dysphoria aren't important or like great representation for folks to understand who they are. But I do think that there is an overarching narrative from the other side that you must hate yourself to be trans, and you're giving up everything about yourself to become someone new, and all of this like fear mongering, um, like conversation around being trans. And I think that if trans people didn't feed that at all, there would be a shift in understanding.
mm,
There is a lot of conversation around dysphoria. There is a lot of conversation around the things that we desire to change to become who we are. And that's a part of transition for many folks. But if we highlighted more about the things that transness creates beauty for us and like empowers
Mm,
us in the ways that it makes us who we are in a positive light, and not coming from like this root of negativity that others could perceive as negativity. It could really shift conversations.
mm.
And I have had a little bit of pushback from people who say that talking about dysphoria helped them figure out who they are. That's valid. I 100% support that. But talking about euphoria just as much could be really culture
Mm.
changing for the trans community.
I think I have a lot of thoughts. I think for one, for one, I agree that dysphoria also needs to be talked about, but I think that talking about euphoria can do a lot of the same things.
Yep.
So, like, if you talk about something that makes you really euphoric as a trans person, and someone goes, "Oh, wait, that also makes me really, like, happy. Like, I feel really comfortable and happy with myself in that way." That can bring along some of the same questions as understanding dysphoria. It starts to kind of be like, "Am I trans? Is this something that I experience? What else is there?" And if you continue to see like, "Oh, I get euphoric when blah, 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 blah." I think it also I come from a background I almost finished a degree in psychology, and then I moved to art history. Um, but when I was studying psychology, there was kind of this I was learning about how I am trans at the same time as I was studying psychology, and I was learning that it was you have to be kind of, like, diagnosed, which I'm sure most of the audience probably knows. If they have ever tried to get any sort of gender affirming care, you typically have to have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, but that also plays into the idea that it's a mental illness. I I think it would be really cool, and I don't know if the medical field would ever go for this, but I think it would be really cool if we were diagnosed gender dys gender euphoria, maybe, instead of dysphoria. So switching it to like, "Hey, you have this thing, you have this experience, but we don't have to make it like it's a disorder or a problem all of the time."
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I had never heard it kind of framed in like the medical way, but I had a lot of trouble when I had to see a therapist and have a letter written to, get my top surgery approved. I read that letter back and I was like, this isn't written about me. Like this
Yeah.
isn't my experience, but I had very real conversations with my therapist at that time about how there's certain verbiage and certain words we have to use so that you get this care approved, and that's just where we're at right now. So to look forward and think about the community focusing instead on joy instead of needing to be diagnosed to access care to be who we are, like that's a really beautiful thing to think about.
That would be really great, and I don't
Yep.
think I also don't wanna minimize the, absolute turmoil that some trans people feel. I did not experience, like, a complete hatred of my body at any point. I never experienced, like I just kind of had the experience of looking in the mirror and being like, "That's not me." But
Yep. Me too.
it wasn't like a depressing thing to me. It wasn't even a joy thing. It was just kind of neutral. It was like, "This just
Yeah.
isn't I just don't recognize this person." Um,
Yeah, I've had a lot of really similar conversations with people about top surgery because I've heard a lot like, I don't hate my chest, so I feel like I don't deserve access to this surgery. And I've told everyone the same thing, which is that you're allowed to look at your body and just feel disconnected or a little like dissatisfied, and that's enough. Like, you don't have to live disconnected. You're allowed to just like make improvements that aren't rooted in hatred.
mhm.
And I think that's an important conversation because there is a lot of dysphoria and hatred of oneself that can cause like a lifelong depression and a lot of like mental health issues for trans folks who do experience that. But that's not
Yeah.
an overarching theme for every trans person. And if it were looked at as like one, option of a way that a trans person may feel towards themselves rather than like the general consensus, we would have a better understanding of the trans community generally.
Absolutely. And because of that, I think it would be really cool to see perhaps both gender dysphoria and gender euphoria as diagnostic criteria in the
That's
DSM-5.
interesting. Yeah.
Or I guess it would have to be in the next one, so it'd be in the DSM-6 or whatever the next one is. I think we're in the 6 now. I don't remember anymore.
Yeah, I don't know, but that is a very interesting conversation that I would like to pick your brain about a little bit more at a later date.
Absolutely. It kind of just happened 5 seconds ago, so I have to formulate my own thoughts about it as well.
Yeah, we'll let
But
it simmer a little bit longer.
yeah, I wonder if that's even something that could be done. Like, I've never
I
heard
don't see why
of
not.
I've never heard of anything being diagnosed based on positive attributes. It's typically got to affect your way of life, which I guess euphoria
Euphoria
also
does
affects
affect
your
your
way
way
of
of
life.
life.
I don't
You know
know. This
what?
is something to think about
Is this a medical breakthrough right now?
on
We'll
this
see.
24-hour live stream.
We'll ponder about it a little bit more before we tell the world about it.
Yeah, what do this will be aired later, but what do people in the comments think? I am so excited to see what
Yeah,
people think in the comments.
I might make some content about this. I think this is really fascinating. I've never thought of it
Absolutely.
that way.
I haven't either. I'm actually kind of excited about this thought
Me too.
process, even
Me
if it
too.
doesn't go anywhere. It's just interesting.
Yeah, the conversation around it will be interesting enough for me.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Moving slightly forward,
Yeah.
so I don't get stuck on this for like 2 hours.
Mhm.
Speaking of like surgery and things like that, you recently started offering like prep Zoom calls, which is something I personally haven't seen anyone do before. This is kind of an exciting thing as well. Tell us a little bit more about like what kind of questions can be addressed in these calls.
Yeah, so this is another thing that I had never seen offered, and I was like, this should be offered. So now I offer it. I actually just got off of one right before this call. So I just surpassed 50 calls. I started, I don't know, 2 months ago, and the
Wow.
interest has just been through the roof. My time is limited because of the amount of different jobs that I work, but I'm slowly opening my schedule up to offer more because the need is there. I've
Mm,
talked to well, originally I thought that this would just be for people like me who were like kind of in like the beginning stages of their surgery, had questions about the process, wanted to talk to someone who's gone through it, that kind of thing. And I have booked quite a few of those, but I've also booked with partners and caregivers of people who will be taking care of their partner or their friend
mm,
post-op and want to have all the information. I've had group meetings with therapists and their patients. I've had meetings with parents of teenagers who've mentioned top surgery, just a whole bunch of different things now, kind of covering all the bases. I've talked to people about the actual process, how to do it, who to talk to, what the steps are. I've talked to people about how to get insurance coverage. I've talked to people about advocating for yourself in a consultation and what that looks like, picking your surgeon, going through the recovery process. And I've calmed a lot of parents and partners' worries about the process as well, just sharing my lived experience. So that's been a really beautiful journey. I kind of just did it because I got so many DMs from people asking questions that I just didn't have the time to answer, like 10, 15 DMs a day. I just couldn't get to everyone and I didn't want to leave questions unanswered. So offering
yeah.
that like connective one-on-one time has proven to be like really, really great and needed. So I'm excited about where it's gonna go.
I love that. Is this something that you would be interested in like partnering with other people as well to try and get more people seen? Like, would you be interested in like creating some sort of like, I don't know, like training for people to kind of help you out in taking on some of those calls as well?
Yeah, I've never thought about that. But if it becomes a volume that I can't handle, I would absolutely be down to, extend it so that more people can be helped and, worked with for sure. Haven't gotten to that
Absolutely.
point yet, but you never say never.
Absolutely. What yeah, if the need ever gets there, that's another thing that feel free to reach out to me about, and we'll see how we can figure out something to
For
help give you
sure.
more hands to reach people. I think it's really important what you're doing and all of the steps you're taking to really like further our community and help make sure everyone's taken care of. I think that's
Thank
like
you.
the general vibe is just everyone needs to be taken care of, and
They do. They
here's how
do.
we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just like, all right, internet children, let's go. Everybody pitch in. We're going to take care of each other. And it works. And people want to be a part of something like that. So it's, yeah. Yeah.
I think people are desperate right now, and I use desperate very intentionally. People are
Yeah.
desperate for connection, and they are desperate for just some semblance of positivity.
Yeah.
Like it's so unbelievably rare right now that people really want to jump on things like this that are just blossoming with with positivity and community building. Anyone who is still feeding off of hate is just doing the wrong thing, in my opinion. They're not gonna last long right now.
No, they'll burn themselves out, but we'll be here standing strong with our communities that we've built on actual love and community and support.
Absolutely. Are there any other services that you hope to offer in the future, or even services that you hope other people will offer?
Yeah. I mean, there's always services other people I hope that they'll offer. Like just anything in the community. I'm like, tell me what you're passionate about. I will support you. But as far as I go, I've found that with these top surgery calls, it's kind of become like, yes, they've all been focused around top surgery, but I've noticed that shift of like healthcare professionals will reach out and say, hey, how can I better support my top surgery patients? And parents are saying, hey, how can I support my child who's going to get top surgery? And it's become these other genres and categories of people who are tying it back to top surgery, which was the original offering, but they want to just talk to a trans adult, because that in itself is like not accessible to everyone, and they just want to make sure
Mm,
like their patients or their kids or their partners are like gonna be okay. So sometimes I wonder if maybe I should offer a couple different topics of like Zoom calls, like something for like family and parents to ask questions about their queer youth, or something for healthcare providers to offer some insight. So I've been toying around with that idea, but the top surgery calls are so new that I'm going to let them like ride out a little bit longer, see where the needs lie. Maybe when I hit around 100 calls, I'll have a better understanding of what else is needed. But yeah, for now, that's on the horizon. We'll see.
absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great. And it occurred, obviously, it occurs to me that we as trans people don't always get the resources we need, and we don't always have access to knowing things. One example would be I didn't know that I was going to, like, when I started T, no one told me that I was going to be going through male puberty and menopause at the same time. And so that experience was wild. um, and so things like that like really we should be knowing,
Yeah,
but we aren't really given access to. I can totally see why people would need to have those calls to like prep for their surgery, because the doctors aren't always going to know what a trans person needs as they're having those surgeries. I mean, obviously they can tell you what medications to take, what to avoid before the surgery, what drink enough water, things like
yeah,
that. Obviously, yes, but I can see why it would help to have a trans person like tell you, who's gone through the surgery, be like, hey, here's a couple of things that the doctors may not tell you.
right.
On the flip side, it never did occur to me that the doctors don't always have access to trans people to ask these questions. Like,
Yep.
how can I best help you? Like, there's just kind of a lack of connection on both ends. That has not ever crossed my mind before, that they don't have those resources. So that's really interesting.
It is. And I didn't know that was a need that well, I knew it was a need that needed to be met because I'm a trans person who's been to the doctor before, but I didn't know that it was a need that I could help fulfill. Like I just didn't go there in
Yeah.
my brain, but I've had
Yes.
a couple therapists, a couple nurse practitioners, and a surgeon all reach out to me just to ask questions, like in my Zoom
Wow.
calls, which I think is a great sign too, that people are trying to do the right thing and be informed, which is all that I could ever ask for.
Mm.
That's what my whole platform stands for. So I'm happy to talk to anyone who just wants 30 minutes of my time.
Yeah.
Yep.
It reminds me also of our friends' TNET trainings, trans and non-binary education trainings. Um, One of them, Charlie, is also in one of our panel discussions, so we'll hear from them. But it's they go out specifically. They're commissioned usually by, I think they said, hospitals or schools to come and do education trainings on like non-binary people and trans people, and specifically like kind of talk about how not to be a jerk to your gender diverse coworkers and students and patients.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of that, like hearing from trans people, you know, kind of bridging that access. So I'm happy that there's several kind of organizations even that I can name, or several people even that are kind of doing this work that definitely represents a shift that is much needed. And TNET actually does this for anyone who doesn't get to see the panel that Charlie is in. They do this in Texas, of all places, of all
Wow.
states. They
Yeah.
do this education out of Texas. I was my jaw was on the floor. I was like, "You you
Brave
are
soul.
right. You
Yeah.
are dangerous."
Mm.
But such good work that they're doing. I'm
Yeah.
so excited. So we're kind of running up on time. I do have one last question.
Sure.
You have very recognizable flower tattoos. Do they have a deeper meaning? Not all of them do, but they're lovely either way, and I just wanted to ask.
Thank you. Yeah, funny story. I get asked every single day on my page why I paint these on my chest. These are not painted on my chest, these are tattoos. They're there
Okay.
forever. People think I'm like branding myself and I'm like painting them every day. I That's cool if you like paint your chest every day for the internet. They're tattoos. I got them about a year and a half after my surgery. I there's not like a specific meaning per flower or anything. I just wanted a garden growing out of the
Mm,
scars, as if the scars were like a garden bed. You can see on my page, it's like my scars aren't perfectly straight. They're a little bumpy. You know, the human body is the way that it is. And it just reminded me of like new growth and change and
mm.
transformation. And I'm colorful and I'm whimsical and I'm fun. And I went to a tattoo artist that I trust and I said, put a plethora of wildflowers on my chest and make them big and make them colorful. And here we are. And they're not painted, they're tattoos.
I actually, before I wrote that question, I went through your page and was like making sure that they weren't painted because they
Yeah,
do kind of have a watercolor
it's the
esque like.
style. Yeah.
Yeah, they look like almost watercolor, but they look identical in every single picture, and I was like, "That can't be painted. There's no way anyone is good enough to replicate that over and over again."
No, and I wouldn't. The amount of time it would just be time consuming. And it's so funny. My partner said for April Fool's Day, I should have told everybody on the internet that this is a tattoo and like put makeup over them and be like, I didn't paint my flowers today. But I was like, that'll cause too much long-term confusion because the people still ask me every day if they're painted. So I didn't do that because I don't want to give them any ammo that the painting is real. They are tattoos, but thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all right. Well, that's all of the questions I have for today. Again, thank you so much for coming on.
Of
For
course.
anyone who maybe doesn't follow you or would like to remember where to follow you, where can the audience find you?
So my Instagram is where I do most of my advocacy work. My Instagram is at just say SK because my name is SK.
And are there any like upcoming events that you are a part of that you'd like to promote?
I have a lot of stuff in the works, but I haven't announced anything yet. So you can just stay tuned on my Instagram and you'll see all the upcoming exciting things.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, go follow them, and then you will be informed when they are doing other things. Absolutely. All right. Well, again, thank you so, so much for doing this. This has been a great conversation. I'm excited to see where the collaboration can go and where the thought about gender euphoria diagnosis could go. That,
Yes, super interested in that.
yeah, we should absolutely talk more about that. That would be fun.
We will.
Um, Definitely. Until then, I really appreciate you being here and for our our inaugural event nonetheless. Um, this has been very fun and I look forward to more in the future.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Bye.
Bye.